Okay, I hung on to this comment for like 2.5 weeks because I really wanted to do the video response right, and it just so happens that I rewatched an old favorite of mine I hadn't seen in years, and it is perfect for this conversation. The movie It Follows came out in 2014, and right now you can stream it for free if you have a subscription to Netflix and Amazon Prime. The film is a postmodern take on the slasher, so we do have all of our characters, including our final girl, who is this one named Jay. Jay and her younger sister Kelly and a couple of their friends don't seem to have a lot to do with their days. The girls live with their alcoholic mother, dad's not in the picture, it's unclear what happened. But long story short, Jay is the pretty sister. She's constantly got guys giving her attention, and since they don't have much to do, it seems that she spends a lot of her evenings going on dates. This is Hugh. She's been on a few dates with him at the start of the movie already. Now, after going to dinner, Jay decides to sleep with Hugh in his car. She's in for a nasty surprise when she comes to and he's explaining to her that this thing is gonna follow her because she slept with him. So of course the film just has to play around with this old as dirt horror movie trope where the woman is considered hysterical, something's happening to her that only she can see, nobody really believes her. Jay's friends help her to try to track down Hugh and figure out what's going on because she starts seeing weird things afterwards. Well, come to find out, there is no magical explanation. This thing just exists, and it is very much real. It's like the STD boogeyman. Basically, you pass it on when you sleep with somebody, and it's this shape-shifting wall of a force. You can't reason with it. It doesn't speed up, but it is always headed toward you, and you don't want to let it get to you. We see what happens when it gets to you in the opening scene of the film with a different victim who was presumably earlier on the chain of this whole curse. The film opens with a girl running out of her suburban home in an adolescent nightie set, but these red heels on her feet, stumbling down the asphalt, looking behind her shoulder at nothing while her dad and a couple of other neighbors ask her if she's okay. She drives out to the beach and then just sits there, presumably waiting for some kind of fate to meet her. And it does. We see in the morning, I can't show it here, she got pretty good. We see the high heels still intact on her feet, which are poking out at odd angles. So we have this somewhat ridiculously dressed, half adolescent, half young woman embodying this sort of hilarious trope that we have for female victims in the horror genre. Freaking out at nothing, failing to flag down any good help, stumbling at a slower pace in these feminine built heels when she could have just taken them off and run faster. It's almost as if she can't remove them because they are a mark of her womanhood, aka sleeping with somebody, which is why the monster's chasing her. As I've pointed out a few times already, this nebulous explanation surrounding these girls' ages, whether they're teenagers or adult women, is very important and intentional. There's actually lack of definition surrounding any kind of world building in this movie, and again, that's intentional. Different styles, technologies, and so on confuse us over what era this is meant to be set in. Indeed, we don't even know what time of the year it is because here the girls are on a walk in what looks like winter coats, but when we were just introduced to Jay in the previous scene, she was swimming. Indeed, she is quite literally suspended. This introductory imagery is meant to set the vibe for us. There's even incorporations of things like this that don't exist at all to keep us on our toes in case we feel like we might be close to pinning down what time this took place in. It's like a fever dream world suspended between realities. And again, there's really no sense of urgency until our creature is introduced. It's somewhat defined that Jay's in her early 20s, but we also know that she's living at home. So even that which is more defined is still just clarifying for us that she's in an in-between state. This is especially important because in a traditional slasher, it is the promiscuity specifically of teenagers that is punished because they aren't supposed to be doing it yet. The creature, or demon, if you will, does two things essentially to its victim. The first is, of course, punish them directly for participating in like careless sexual activity. The secondary and possibly more cruel thing is that you must become an active participant in harming others through sexual activity in order to get this thing off your back. The only way that you can get rid of this thing is to pass it on to somebody else. Obviously, at this point, we can identify that the creature is representative of sexual trauma. Now, eventually, the friends do help Jay track down Hugh, which that's not even his real name. He basically doubles down on what he said the first time. He has no new info to give her. So Jay basically is left to make this choice, and of course time is of the essence. Is she going to pass this on, or is she going to run for the rest of her life? Luckily, she has two candidates that are very ready to get in her pants. The first is her neighbor. This guy kind of just watches the shit show from across the street until he decides that the damsel in distress is interesting enough for him to go see what's up. He does not believe what she says at all is true, even as she's being attacked by this invisible force in front of him. But he wants to sleep with her. I mean, he already just wants to sleep with her, period. But he's willing to do it for her for the peace of mind. This is a huge bummer for her longtime childhood friend, who is our nice guy. If I still drank, I would make a game out of how many times they show this dude's face. Oh, so sad that Jay's getting attention from other men. I'd be wasted before the third act. So again, back to the very, very original video that I made about this trope. This dude, he's the arrogant guy. He doesn't think there's a real threat, so he takes it on without taking it seriously at all. So Jay passes it on to him. He takes zero precautions. He gets got. The chain goes backwards, so now the thing's back on her. They wind up doing some other stuff, some tactics that end up like potentially getting rid of this thing permanently, but just in case, Jay does end up sleeping with the nice guy because she decides that she wants to be with him because he stuck it out with her through all of that. And then, just to cover their bases, right after that, he goes to see a spicy worker on the corner. And the final shot is them holding hands walking down the sidewalk. And if you note right there, it never becomes clear whether that's just a neighbor who happens to be walking behind them or something else. Obviously, as a postmodern take, Jay is not painted to deserve her death. We just explore the concept of why women are painted to deserve their deaths throughout the horror genre. So the entire concept of the film explores how doom looms over girls who choose to have sex. But at the same time, our protagonist is never shamed or painted in a light that she deserves what she's going through, even though she participates in intimacy with 3 different men throughout the film. It's seen as a necessary survival mechanism as opposed to some sort of flippant act, like on behalf of the neighbor kid. Because he chose not to take his sexual activity seriously, he met an early end. Obviously, I would highly recommend this movie. And by the way, if this was entertaining to you for even a second, please let me know. Please make suggestions. I am so much more about movies than anything else.